Recently, while running around Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, I came across this pot. Pots are a relatively famous item among the franchise's history. First appearing in Zelda: A Link to the Past, pots carry various items such as hearts, rupees, or other things to help out during Link's adventure. You can throw them, swing your sword at them, or roll through them, all for the ultimate goal to shatter them. But what if I wasn't allowed to break it and instead had to escort one across the entire region of Hyrule? Could I successfully carry this pot across different terrain, all while fighting off every monster encounter without it breaking? Let's find out. To make this challenge the best it can be, I want to cover as much walkable ground as possible. Ideally, we would find any pot Link can pick up near one of the 4 corners of the map and then walk to the opposite end. Considering this, there are 4 shrines I can teleport to in their respective corners, so the easiest way to mark our starting point would be figuring out if a pot can be found around any of these locations. I began my search at Eventide Island in the bottom right of the map and was teleported just outside of a large enemy camp. I ran around looking for any pot I could carry, but only came across a few barrels. I ran around a bit longer and ultimately decided this area wasn't a good choice. The next location was in the bottom left of the map, the Lightning Temple. I immediately located a pot after arriving, and even though it was a bit larger than I would have hoped, it might just be the only place I can find a pot this close to a corner of the map. The bigger issue now was, can I even leave this temple with the pot? While trying to find my way out, I walked down some stairs and ran into a few enemies. Figuring I might need some practice in protecting a pot while fighting, I decided to engage. I set the pot down and it immediately shattered after being placed on a slight incline. Even though this was a test run, the pot breaking this easily and quickly made me think this challenge might be next to impossible. So not only do the pots easily break in this game, just like every other Zelda game, but the enemies actually pick up items in the surrounding area too. I watched an enemy construct fuse a different pot to its fist, which taught me that I cannot leave another pot near enemies when fighting. I ran around a bit longer and not only found the entrance of the temple, but also learned there were pots right at the front door. So we can mark the Lightning Temple down as a potential spot to start this challenge. Our next stop was in the Akala region, located in the top right of Hyrule. The shrine spawned me on a beach that had nothing around me, but right above this spot was the ancient tech lab. I made my way up the mountain and found a pot I've never seen before. Outside of the lab, there was a dark pot with a red accent on the front, which marked the second possible starting location for our challenge. A cool thing about this pot is that it was smaller than the one we found at the Lightning Temple, which would make this one more ideal for a challenge such as ours. I jotted down the tech lab as a potential spot and headed to the final corner of the map to observe. I teleported to the Otak shrine located deep in the Hebra Mountains. Around, I found a few enemies and some frozen ice blocks. I melted them down just in case there was a pot inside, but wasn't too shocked to learn they had nothing in them. I ran around outside the cave for a bit, but only found some snow and small trees surrounding me. So now that I visited all 4 areas, I decided that the ancient tech lab would be the best starting point for this challenge so I could carry the small pot all the way to the Lightning Temple where the other pot was. I spent some time figuring out the most efficient path after taking a brief look at the map, and it looked something like this. I would start at the ancient tech lab in the corner of Akala and walk just outside the base of the Elden Mountains. From here, I'd cross the Them Bridge and follow the path leading through Hyrule Field. I'd then go through Gerudo Pass and go up through the shallow river path leading to the stable outside of the Gerudo Desert. From here, I'd follow the path that leads into Gerudo Town and continue just outside of here until I make it to the Lightning Temple. Now I just need to be cautious of all the steep hills, harsh weather, and hordes of enemies during this adventure, but I should be good to go. While I craft some speed elixirs for this journey, let's go over a handful of self-imposed rules I've made for this challenge. Rule number 1, I can only use my feet to get across the map. That means I cannot construct any vehicles to help. Rule number 2, I can use whatever consumables I want to help my experience. Healing items, speed buffs, and outfit changes are allowed. Rule number 3, I can place the pot down wherever I want in order to deal with other tasks such as fighting enemies or lifting it using Ultra Hand up and down steep obstacles. And the last and most obvious rule, if it breaks, I restart. Let's begin. I started my journey by drinking one of the speed elixirs, picked up the pot, and began walking down the hill away from the ancient tech lab. I avoided the first enemy base on the left side near the lab and walked past the stable where I just made the elixirs. I continued following the path, which led me to my first enemy encounter. 2 bokoblins were riding a horse and spotted me from a good distance away. I stumbled a bit while trying to find a flat surface to put the pot down and managed to take out the enemies before they got near me. Though this battle was quick, it did teach me that if I was going to fight, I needed to find a place to set the pot down way in advance if possible. I walked a bit further and spotted a smaller group of enemies. This time I set the pot down a little bit away and engaged the fight by shooting an Aracuda out of the sky. By getting the upper hand on the fight, I was able to keep them a safe distance in battle without having to worry about the pot as much. Though it did make me wonder, if I walked far enough away, would the pot despawn? Let's hope I don't find out the hard way. I walked along the path and was jump scared by 2 Octoroks. Normally these enemies aren't too threatening, but when carrying something super fragile like this pot, the rocks they shoot might have a large enough AoE that can break it while I'm carrying it. Luckily, I parried the rocks back at them, but was still scared of any other ones that might be around. I continued through a dense forest very cautiously, walked by another stable, and made my way to a large bridge. This bridge had a large group of enemies camping out on it that would make it too tricky to run through holding the pot. I decided to place the pot down on an elevated spot before starting my attack. Since we were up so high, I thought it would be most effective to shoot all of the enemies off with an explosion. I shot some bomb arrows at the ground and was able to knock away a good chunk of the group. I fought the last few enemies up close and successfully cleared a path for the pot and I to walk through. As the day wrapped up and nightfall began, I was just outside of the Akala region with still a great distance to go. I knew there would be a lot of enemy encounters on these main paths, but I genuinely thought I would just be able to jog away most of the time. I think this stems from my last video where I pretended to be an NPC and I could just jog away from the enemies and they would eventually give up and turn around and go back to where they started. The good news though is that I now had a lot of experience dealing with certain enemies as long as I could set the pot down a safe distance away before fighting. But unfortunately, I didn't get to apply this method for our next encounter. While continuing towards the base of the Elden Mountains, 2 Stalkoblins appeared. I quickly found a spot to place the pot down to begin the fight. When approaching the first one, it immediately shot to the right towards the pot. Don't touch the pot! No, no, no! Dude, almost picked up the pot and threw it. I didn't consider that. I'm so glad there was a rock there. And as you can see, I got very lucky. I forgot at this moment that most enemies will use their surroundings as a way to fight if they don't already have a weapon. That means that enemies who are empty-handed will sometimes pick up stones in the surrounding area to toss at Link. I believe this Stalkoblin noticed a rock to throw at me, but I interpreted that as it going for my pot to toss. Thankfully, when I swung at it, I didn't hit the pot myself and was able to take care of both Stalkoblins. I ran for a few more minutes longer until 2 more appeared on this beachy area. While I was a bit more prepared for this fight, I was still a bit on edge. I waited for the empty-handed Stalkoblin to miss a swing at me before setting the pot down and destroying him. Luckily, the one with the bow missed me and the pot while shooting before I took care of it too. As the sun rose, I made a mental note to not travel at night if I don't have to. The less enemies that have to jump on me, the better. It was now day 2 of Link's adventure with the pot, and I crossed over at Thin Bridge, located a little bit behind Hyrule Castle. Still on high alert from the Stalkoblins from the night before, I minded my business as I watched an NPC take on a Bokoblin and came across another Aracuda flying around. I took him down and learned he was part of a much larger group that was out of my field of vision. Oh. Uh-oh, uh-oh. Panicking. Can you still hear it? Ah! Okay. That sigh of relief you heard was very real. My stress was starting to rise the further I got away from my starting point, and I still had a good distance to go and felt like my luck was going to run out eventually. I ran over the hill of the area I was at and noticed even more enemies. At least this time I was able to put the pot down quickly before I took care of them. A bit further down the hill and I ran into my first stone talus. I wasn't able to put the pot down before it noticed me, so I ran behind this larger rock to make sure any attack sent my way didn't accidentally hit the pot too. As I ran to take care of the talus, 2 choo-choos spawned right near the pot, which with a slight touch could knock over the pot and have it break. I very quickly took out the choo-choos, jumped and exploded the talus, and continued running away from this terrible hill. From here I just ran for about 5 minutes straight through Hyrule Field, avoiding enemy camps during the process. When I was in the center of the field, it started to rain. I continued running during the rain, but then contemplated for a brief moment about the dangers of a thunderstorm. Now, I'm not entirely sure if the pots in this game actually conduct electricity like the other metal weapons do, and I know pots are made of clay, but, the game could have been funky. If you happen to know if pots do indeed conduct electricity in this game, please let me know with a comment, because I never found out. I kept an eye on all of my metal items in my inventory, as they would tell me if there was a lightning storm, but luckily, the rain remained calm. I then ran for about another 5 minutes on the path. I didn't want a repeat of the enemy encounters I had earlier on the hill, so I avoided as many enemies as I could. As the sun was setting, I came across a small handful of enemies just outside of the stable I wanted to stay at for the night. I needed to take care of them as quickly as possible because the closer it became nighttime, the closer it was for Stalkoblins to start appearing. I took care of the group, grabbed the pot, and dashed towards the stable. I decided to wait out the night in real time. I had a fire by me that would have allowed me to time travel to morning, but I was worried about the pot disappearing. Again, this is another thing that I didn't test myself. Would time traveling cause the pot to disappear? If you happen to know this, please leave a comment below, as I didn't figure that out. I instead spent the night listening to some calm music at the stable until the following day. As the clock struck 5 a.m., I drank another speed elixir and headed towards the goal. It only took about a minute until I ran into my first group of enemies for the day. This time, it was an encounter with a group of 5 constructs. I set the pot down a good bit away and tried getting some good shots at them from a distance with my bow. Unfortunately, these guys are pretty quick and ran right at me. I did my best to kite them away from the pot, and for a moment, I thought they were going to use the pot as a weapon. Luckily, these constructs already had weapons attached to their bodies, so I wasn't at a high risk of them grabbing it. Still, the construct leader was pretty tanky and put up a good fight, and there was another one I fought that had a laser that was spinning around in circles that could have hit the pot. I ended up taking care of the construct group and walked over a few ridges before making it just outside the Gerudo Canyon Pass. I took a moment to study my surroundings and thought I might be able to just walk right over. Still, I took the safe route and used the Ultra Hand ability for the first time to safely pick up and move the pot across over the rock. Now that I was over on this side, I put on some gear to help with the intense heat and continued walking along the path. After a couple of minutes of walking and no enemies around, I arrived at the base of this shallow river. Now let me just take a moment to tell you about this river because it might be harder than any enemy encounter we've had in this video so far. Here at this river, you'll find a series of short waterfalls that are too tall to climb while holding the pot. This means I needed to find a place to set the pot down, lift it up with Ultra Hand, and find a rock underneath the shallow water on top that's flat enough for it to rest on while I climb up myself. I continued this tedious movement up all of the waterfalls carefully until I reached this spot. I assumed that this shallow river continued up and around the path, but it turns out it comes from a much larger and deeper river. But since I was committed to this path so far, I decided to press forward. Now I know it might look impossible to get the pot up and around this part, but I came up with a pretty good solution that I'm proud of. I decided to use the Ultra Hand ability to hold the pot in the air for a few seconds, drop it into the water, and then use the rewind feature to bring it back up into the air. While that was happening, I ran forward as quickly as I could and got to a spot where I could then pick it up again with the Ultra Hand ability. I did this a couple of times and ended up at a spot with the pot. The only problem was now is that I was stuck to find a place to set it. I took a moment to look at my surroundings and realized that there was no way I could safely make it past this entire river doing this method I just did without a high risk of it breaking. So I decided to tediously bring the pot down the same way I brought it up, making sure not to let the frustration get to me and ultimately break the pot. So now I was back at the base of the shallow waterfall. I ended up backtracking towards the alternate path that was on the map, and it turns out I've never actually walked this way before. I used the Hero's Path feature that shows where Link has been throughout your entire playthrough, and yeah, it turns out I've never actually walked on this path through the entire game. This path only had a few Lizalfos here and there, and luckily I found a few spots to set the pot down to deal with them before they saw me. Periodically, I'd run into some enemies and snipe them with fire arrows before continuing along. I ran for about 4 more minutes until the sun rose, which, lucky for me, no Stalkgoblins appeared that night. Now this might have been because of the area that I was in didn't actually spawn any Stalkgoblins, but I could be wrong. Maybe I just got really lucky. I then walked over this super sketchy bridge which followed the path inside the mountainside. I kept walking until a giant choo-choo appeared. Knowing it had a large exploding radius of electricity, I kept my distance before taking care of it. The path then continued down and around until I was just outside of another stable. And now that we were here, I only had the Gerudo Desert to get through. I took one final look at the map and saw how far I traveled and hoped I wouldn't have to restart after making it this far. I grabbed the pot and continued until I made it to the Karakara Bazaar with 0 enemy encounters. Leaving here, I struggled a bit staying on the path. The path led straight into the giant canyon in the desert, which confused me a bit, but it turns out there is in fact a small area for me to walk through. Assuming an enemy would jump me at any minute, I did some practice placements on the path just to make sure the sand was steady. And right on cue, a choo-choo appeared. I quickly dealt with this, but then a random Lizalfos I didn't see landed right on top of me. There were a couple of moments where the pot was almost broken due to its lightning attack. The lightning Lizalfos has a spot on its horn that, when shot with an arrow, causes an area of electricity to appear. I made contact with that, and luckily it didn't hit my pot. I kept my distance while fighting it very carefully, but ultimately took care of it. But again, made another mental note to avoid these enemies. From here, I ran straight towards Gerudo Town. I walked towards the back of the town to see if there was an exit, but couldn't find one. I ended up leaving towards the left side of town and could see the lightning temple in the distance with just a few more steps to go. In the distance, I was able to spot a couple of electric Lizalfos and was able to avoid them. I have a vague memory of this area being flooded with quicksand, but maybe I've progressed so much in the story that it was now gone. Or maybe I'm just misremembering where they are. After an hour and a half of escorting this pod across Hyrule, I finally entered the Lightning Temple. So now what do? I made it this great distance all for this image of these 2 pots to be side by side that no one has maybe seen before. Obviously I have this video to mark the occasion of it happening, but I needed something more. In this Zelda game, you're able to fuse items together to make different weapons or vehicles to help during your journey. After doing this, you can save the project as a favorite and the game will remember what you created so you can build it at any moment. So, I decided to fuse the 2 pots together. By doing so, I now have this image of the 2 pots being side by side forever. Not only do I have access to this image forever, but I can also spawn a replica of the two pots whenever and wherever I want. Nice. It was quite the journey traveling across from one corner of the map to the other. I've never thought about walking all the way across this map, let alone making sure a pot doesn't break in the process, but it's something I'm glad I've now completed. And now that I've done what I've came for, there's only one thing left to do. You know what Link would do in this situation? That felt good.